Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to be going over my top 5 tips I think every single Gwen player needs to know. Now, my goal behind this video is to make you a better League of Legends player, as well as to give you a better understanding of the champion that I am covering. I am going to be putting timestamps at every single point of this video because I heavily value your guys' time. I'm going to be putting them up top, as well as the bar down below is going to be segmented into the different tips. If you want to contact me directly with any questions, I try to be as interactive with you guys as possible. I'm going to put a pinned comment down below with a link to my Discord. You can send me a direct message there. So I am a little bit limited with this format, only doing 5 tips, so please make sure if you've been playing Gwen a bit yourself, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. And with all that out of the way, only about 2% of you guys are subscribed that watch my videos, so I heavily encourage you guys, if you get a lot out of the content, to make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And with all that out of the way, let's jump into tip number 1. And getting into tip number 1, ignore the runes and items. This is very early in Gwen's release, and I do not think the optimal build has really been found. But however, I do think Riftmaker is very strong. You can stack Conquer very quickly. Nash's Tooth, I think, is going to be a must on this champion because you're going to want to be weaving in auto attacks a lot. Lichbane can be nice, and Berserker Greaves might find a home. So just disregard this. Tip number 1, we're going to be talking about how Gwen differentiates herself from other assassins. She does not have an extremely strong defensive like a Zed Shadow or a invulnerability frame coming out of Fizz's E where they can avoid a lot of damage. How it really revolves around Gwen is going to be her Hollowed Mist, and this is how she is going to be able to live a certain duration when she is fighting, as well as obviously the little short E dash you get when you are playing Gwen. So how this works is you are getting additional armor and magic resistance. You need to have a good understanding of the enemy champion's burst windows. These are when a Fizz is keying into you. This is when a Zed is ulting into you. This is when the very big burst that is going to be coming your way when you're playing in the mid lane. There are very few consistent damage champions being played in the current meta like Cassiopeia. You're seeing a lot more bursty champions, and this really works into Gwen's hand, and using this Hollowed Mist to negate as much damage as possible is really going to separate the very poor Gwens from the very good Gwens. So do not get caught with your pants down and not having Hollowed Mist up for the enemy champion's burst. So please keep a good understanding of how you are going to be a little bit squishy without your Hollowed Mist, without your dash, and that's why I think that Riftmaker is going to be nice, because it's going to give you a bit of sustain, and then maybe Zhonya's is going to be nice to stop a little bit more burst. So please, in tip number 1, if you don't get anything out of this video but this one point, is your Hollowed Mist ability is really going to be what allows you to survive longer in those fights and stack up more of those snippy stacks, and just be able to do a very large amount of burst damage on the enemy champion. And that will wrap up tip number 1 for Gwen. Alright, and getting into tip number 2, my favorite thing to talk about when I do these champion videos is to talk about the optimal trading window that you can look for on Gwen. Now, you are a bit of a short range champion, so the enemy will be using their abilities quite heavily to try and poke you out when you are looking to CS. So how you want to look to take advantage of this usual trading pattern against a melee champion is you want to have 4 stacks of Snippy up before going into a trade with an enemy champion. Wait for them to use a high impact ability and then take a all in. So a high impact ability would be something like maybe a Syndra is throwing out her Q, maybe a Xerath just used Q and W to try and poke you out as much as they could. So whenever they have an ability down and you've just been farming with your autos, this is a great window that you can look to do a all in, and when they try and trade back on you, you can have that W up, and then obviously E reposition to either chase or to back off after a very strong trade. So the window of power tip that I'm trying to get across here is you want to look for the timing that you have a lot of Snippy stacks up, they have used an ability recently, and they have as minimal threat as possible, and you have as maximum threat as possible on these trades. Obviously, the lower elo you are, the more you can take advantage of these power windows, because people do not understand the matchups. And this is what's great about playing a newer champion in ranked solo queue, is people don't understand your limits and your lethal windows. So if you can get very experienced in Gwen very quickly and know her damage thresholds at different item breakpoints, this is going to really allow you to climb quite quickly on this new champion. And that will wrap up tip number 2 for Gwen. All right, and getting into tip number 3, a very important thing, particularly if this is going to be your first assassin champion that you are going to be picking up. You need to have a good understanding of where your power is in the mid lane. You are going to be higher level than the junglers and the bot lane, so roams against those enemies is going to yield the best possible results. So how you really augment your roams: first of all, sweepers are extremely helpful. Your control wards are really going to help just limit your amount of time that you might have wasted if your roam has already been spotted. Just a quick aside, you can stack up your snippy off any kind of auto. So if you're hitting a blast plant, if you're hitting the honey fruits, you are going to be able to stack this up. Say you're doing a fake roam, you're waiting for your enemy laner to chase, you can just stack up your snippy a little bit and have a nice big Q burst to have on the enemy champion. You want to duck into fog as much as possible and to threaten roams on the enemy champions. This allows you to exert pressure with a very, very minimal effort when playing Gwen. So having a item advantage, because you are going to have access to more gold and more levels, you are going to be stronger. So affecting the enemy jungler is going to be absolutely huge. You are a very good timing is when you have an ultimate and the enemy jungler has an ultimate. This is a huge power differential where you can look to invade the enemy jungler, particularly if you are running Ignite. This is going to just allow you to put him far behind and enable your jungler to counter gank and take the objectives that you want, as well as gank unthreatened by a counter gank. So please, if you don't get anything out of this video except this tip, make sure that you are really taking full advantage of your lane and the strengths that come with having a solo lane to yourself. And that will wrap up tip number 3 for Gwen. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, we're going to cover team fighting. This is going to be a very difficult aspect for Gwen, as most assassins, this is the hardest point. You're able to do very well in 1v1s and in skirmishes where you are under a very little amount of threat and a possibility of just getting bursted out comparatively to 5 enemy champions running around. So how you want to effectively play out team fights is you really want to look for flanks. You want to use scryer blooms. You want to use oracle lenses and control wards to make sure that you are not getting seen out before the enemy team fights begin. Now, if you feel like you're better than the average player in your elo, you essentially want to use your allied champions as a resource. You want to use their HP bars as a resource, essentially using them as big meat bags for the enemy to hit while you carry the team fight. So how you do this is you wait for the fight to engage. This is going to draw the focus of backline champions, and they are not going to be watching for anything coming over the wall. Hopefully you will be able to throw out your first needlework, slowing down your enemy target by about 60% and allowing you to close distance and get into a really good spot. Now, when playing Gwen, your damage is ramping with your ultimate, so the more you are able to do, the deeper you get into the fight, the more damage you do. So it's a bit more of a ramping type of playstyle when you are with Gwen, setting up your extra snip stacks as well as your extra needlework stacks. So essentially you should be able to burst out the first squishy with maybe 1 or 2 casts of your needlework and maybe a snip or 2, and then to clean up the team fight with that third cast that fires out 5 needles doing an insane amount of damage. So please, you want to have as minimal threat on you as you are ramping up your damage. If you're using Rift Maker, you're getting stacks on that, you're getting your 1000 cut and extra snip stacks, and you are getting your needlework to the point where you can throw out 5 needles. So you really want to approach this as a little bit like a Darius. You do not want to be taking the full brunt of enemy damage while you are stacking up your passive bleed stacks. You want to be taking as minimal damage as possible during that point. Now, when you are flanking, it is very important to understand that your Hollowed Mist does not need to be used immediately, only when the enemies start turning on you and looking to damage you. So please keep these things all in mind when you're looking to team fight. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below, and that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and getting into the final tip, we are going to talk about Gwen's terrain scaling. Now, if you did not know, there is a very, very clear safe side and unsafe side when you are playing Gwen out of the mid lane or the top lane. If you did not know, you're unable to dash over this wall when you're playing Gwen, but you are able to dash over this wall. So taking trades On this top part of the map, when you are on the top side, it is just going to be a lot safer for you, because if you get in trouble, you can just dash over the wall, and very limited amount of champions are able to follow you. And it is the exact opposite for the other side. If you're playing out of the top side, you're unable to dash over the wall to safety there, and you are able to dash over the wall to safety here. So having a good understanding of what is your safe side, or what is your strong side, and what is your weak side when playing Gwen is going to be highly effective. Now, I encourage you, if you're not extremely practiced with the dash route of Gwen, or dash range of Gwen, to jump into a practice tool and just get a very good understanding of which walls you can jump over and some walls that you cannot jump over. I think this is a pretty unique dash range. Only I think it's about the ergot dash range. It's not too long, it's not extremely short, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get a good understanding of what the dash range is on Gwen. And obviously, when you are roaming to the different sides, you can think of it as a bit of a safe side, or a strong side, and a weak side. Again, it is, you are unable to dash over this thick wall here, but you can dash to safety on this side. And then conversely, it is the safe side over here when you're on the top side, and there isn't really a really skinny wall to jump over here, except that very, very short skinny wall, and then a wall over here. So when playing Gwen, if you keep these things in mind, it will increase your overall ability to roam, to team fight, and to minimize giving away some of those kills that might come with overextending with the champion that you do not know the exact overall ability to burst people out and your potential to do damage. So this makes the champion a bit more forgiving, but it also increases the skill cap and your skill expression when playing Gwen when you have mobility. It isn't something like an Annie where you just are running at people and just trying to burst them out and be extremely simple. You need to effectively plan out your roams, your team fights, so if you know that you're starting to lose the fight, to back off to one of those walls and use your terrain scalings to a very high degree. That will wrap up my final tip, guys. If you have any questions for me, you can hit me up in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and as always, guys, take it easy.